Good evening. My name's Harry Fisher. I'm the chair of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, Monday, January 29th, 2024. Calling to order at 6:33. And could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Thank you. Everyone's been provided with a copy of the agenda. I just would like to suggest one change to the agenda that I should have. Number 10 under old business. I should have noted that these two items were on for discussion purposes only. I don't expect us to be taking a vote. So if there's no objection, seeing no objection, we'll make that change to the agenda. Second up on the agenda is the assessor's report, which we've moved up since considering the geographical distance that Lauren has to travel.
I thank you for that. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the VET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for January 2024. First of all, the grand list of 2023 is complete. I'm going to be signing the list tomorrow. I have given you the totals there in my report. A couple of facts that you need to know. First of all, we'll be sending real estate notices out to all property owners whose assessment has changed from last year's grand list. We will be sending personal property notices out. We usually send them out to all accounts, just so there's no question or concern as to what happened to their assessment. As you can see, the grand list has gone up. Before the Board of Assessment Appeals adjustment, it went up 1.09%. I've put in an estimate for the Board of Assessment Appeals reductions this year at about $85 million. Okay. The Board of Assessment Appeals, I believe, will be accepting appeals beginning February 1st. Jeff Reardon is now the chairman, and we are trying to confirm that office hours will be Monday through Friday up in the Evaristo room 300. Anybody who wants to file appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals, that's where they will have to go. And there should be somebody there Monday through Friday. I'll confirm the hours and get that out to people. The homeowners, senior applications, we'll be sending applications out to all those seniors who were on the program last year and who are required to file this year. The filing period is from February 1st through May 15th. Believe it or not, we were going to start the 2025 revaluation. Just so some of you may not know, we were supposed to do the revaluation in 2020, and due to COVID, we postponed the revaluation to the 2021 grand list. That being said, that does not allow us to postpone forever or an additional 5 years to the next revaluation. So we have to go through a revaluation in 2025. We've drafted the RFP. Purchasing has sent it out. It was sent out on January 9th. It is sent out to all qualified vendors or companies that are certified by the Office of Policy and Management to do revaluation work. The RFP will be due back here to the town on March 12th by 11 a.m. Okay? And I'm saving the best news for last. Litigation. We had a trial back in July. It was the Town of Greenwich and Greenwich American appeal. It was 6 years of tax appeals. Phil Pierce from Cohen and Wolf represented the Town of Greenwich. The trial was in Stamford before Judge Clark. We just received the decision on December 15th, and the Town of Greenwich prevailed on the 2015, 16, and 17 grand list. There was no tax loss to the town on those three grant list years. There was a slight reduction on the 18, 19, and 20 grant lists, and understand that reduction is due to the fact that there were building permits pulled by the taxpayer, by the property, and I had increased their assessment accordingly. The judge determined that I increased it too much. However, we only have to return the tax loss for the total on this appeal is $127,095.17 plus interest that we will pay. Had the plaintiff won this outright, we have an exposure of $3.9 million. So kudos to Phil Pierce, he did the attorney on the matter, and our expert Arnold Grant, and I'll pat myself a little bit on the back for that as well. But yes, so great news for the town of Greenwich. Came in just in time for as a Christmas present. Came in on December 15th. Does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
Leslie?
So this is really more of a comment. The senior tax relief, which are now advertising again, I think it's amazing that people 65 years or older, and obviously with an income level meeting the whatever, can have, still put a home valued up to almost $2.7 million into the tax relief program. So anyway, I think that's an amazing thing. And again, congratulations on your successful litigation.
Any other questions?
So I move that we accept the assessor's report.
Could I have a second? We have a move by Leslie Tarkenton, seconded by Leslie Moriarty to accept the assessor's report without objection. Any objections? It's unanimous to accept the report. Thank you, as always, for your comprehensive report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to number 3 on the agenda, requests for budget adjustments. We have 6 routine applications, and if the clerk, Karen, would read those, please.
AC1, Commission on Aging, for additional appropriation feasibility study, $14,750. FI7, Finance Department, $400,000, bonding resolution for Parkway School. RV2, Registrar of Voters, $10,500, additional appropriation for the early voting presidential primary. FD2 Fire, $25,000, additional appropriation, maintenance of turnout gear. FD3 Fire, $110,000, additional appropriation, lighting for volunteer apparatus. And FD4 Fire, $76,000, additional appropriation, maintenance and custodial supplies.
We need a motion first. So moved by Stephen Selb, seconded by Leslie Tarkenton. I think we can do this by unanimous consent, right? Any objection to approval of the routine items? Hearing none, it's unanimously approved, the 6 items as read out by Karen. We'll now go to number 4, a non-routine application, if I could have that read out.
Yes, we're going to move the F18 Finance, the non-routine application in the amount of $411,000, bonding resolution for Hamilton Avenue School. Would note that it's not included in the package, so.
Could I have a second? Yes.
Then I second that.
Okay, moved by Karen Fasiliotis and seconded by Leslie Tarkenton. We'll start with committee report, the budget committee, please.
So the Budget Committee heard this. Ms. Minarski pointed out that that this item, which is the temporary air conditioning and heating system for Hamilton Avenue School, was approved in the amount of $411,000 at the RTM meeting. However, they had not passed a bonding resolution. Plus, it needed to be separated out from a total bonding resolution that included Parkway, that included the long-term aspect of this particular project. So it was a total of 3.6, I believe, million. So, you know, in the Budget Committee, we talked about it. One of the issues that we talked about was the accounting for this as we'll call it the bridge to the permanent HVAC solution. The RTM had not been prepared to approve that yet. They wanted to know more about, I guess, alternative systems rather than the gas-fired traditional system. And so I think there was a discussion. Mr. Fisher felt that this was a short-term project and should be viewed as such rather than using the traditional program. We did ask Mr. Geiger, and he indicated that this is the methodology that we've done with other projects in the past, and the accounting for it would be, again, the bridge. So the committee voted 3-1 to pass this bonding resolution.
Did any other committees take this up? I don't believe so. I'll just follow up on Leslie's comments. I'm philosophically opposed to bonding something that the town doesn't own and is not a long-term asset of the town. I think bonding ought to be reserved for long-term assets that we actually own. So I'll be voting against this. Is there anybody else that's got a comment and discussion? Leslie Moriarty?
I just want to ask procedurally, if we do not approve the bonding authorization, do the funds automatically come out of capital and non-recurring, or does that need to be a motion of the BET as well?
You could, there's several options. Options number one is it can come out of the operating budget of the Board of Education. You need an interim appropriation from the general fund. Option number two is the B fund, the bond fund, which is before you. Option number three is capital non-recurring. The capital non-recurring has a balance of $4.9 million. There has, over the years, the BET has gone both ways. As far as for small dollar amounts, they've either bonded it or taken it out of the capital non-recurring. So right now you have three choices. One's on the table.
All right, can I then make a motion, an amendment, motion to amend?
Certainly.
I would make a motion to amend that the source of funds for this project come from capital and non-recurring.
I'll second that.
My rationale for that is we've done it in the past where there's smaller dollar amounts coming from that account. I also think the cash balance in that account is more than sufficient to cover the town for emergencies, which is what it's really set up for. It has more opportunities for the fund to increase through insurance proceeds and return of funds for non-bonded projects, and therefore would reduce our need to go to the bond market in the future and pay interest.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, which motion are we voting on?
The amendment.
The amendment.
Oh, actually, well, we should call the roll on both.
Okay, so which one first are we voting on?
Yeah, Harry seconded me. I think we're taking a vote on the amendment.
Vote on
and
the
then
amendment,
either-
yes.
Right, and
If
then
it passes, then you vote on the motion.
Right,
Right.
You don't need to do the bonding.
right.
Sorry, thank you, Scott.
Okay, so this is a vote if you vote yes, you're approving Ms. Moriarty's amendment to fund capital and non-recurring for this item. And I will start with Olczak, Mr. Olczak.
I'm voting yes.
DeChamps, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I vote yes.
I vote yes as well.
Aurora,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher,
Yes.
Tarkington,
No?
Moriarty,
Yes.
Weisbrod, sorry.
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Cal,
Yes.
Alfano,
Yes.
and that motion passes 11-1-0.
Any discussion on the main motion or the main item itself as amended? Hearing none, would you call the roll for the next one, please?
Well, we voted on an amendment, and so the bond resolution, I don't know what to do with the bond resolution. I mean, we're basically amended, so we're voting again.
Well,
I mean, the bond resolution's off the,
we
bond resolution is, I mean, we can vote on the bond resolution, yes
we
or no.
amended We amended the bond resolution.
Well, we didn't because we
I
voted
think we
on-
made a new motion altogether. Yeah. I think Leslie made a new motion altogether. It wasn't
Right,
an amendment.
right,
So
right.
I think Karen's right, so I don't think we need, either you need to, we all need to vote no on this or not vote at all. Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, we'll vote on the bonding resolution, but I think based on what we just heard, the bonding resolution is going to fail. So the question is, well, let's just take a vote and just make it clean. Okay, so F18, finance bonding resolution for Hamilton Avenue School in the amount of $411,000. We'll start with Alfano,
No.
Cobb,
No.
Jansen,
No.
Weisbrod,
No.
Moriarty,
No.
Tarkington,
Yes.
Fisher,
No.
Vasiliotis, no. Selps,
No.
Aurora,
No.
Duchamps,
No.
and Alcheck.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So the Hamilton Avenue temporary equipment will be funded out of the capital non-recurring fund. Leslie, you've got a comment?
No, may I ask a question of Mr. Minorski?
Sure.
So, Pete, this went through the RTM without a financing methodology, and that's why it came to the Budget Committee. Now what happens? Does this go back to the RTM, or what happens with this, with the,
Roland and I were just talking about that. I'd have to review the minutes as to what exactly they voted on, but I believe it would be the same thing if it was a bonding resolution. They need a funding source. And I don't think the minutes reflected a funding source. So it would have to go back for an appropriation out of the capital non-recurring.
Good catch. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you, Pete. Thank you very much.
Anything else before we move on to number 5, the Comptroller's report? Our Comptroller, Mr. Minarski.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear that? Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, other BET members. I normally give the Comptroller's report to the sitting 12 members, but I'd like to recognize that there's 5 new members, so I'm going to vary my report a little bit to reflect their presence and go a little bit deeper into some of my comments.
Good idea, and thank you.
Okay. ARPA, the first, everybody has a copy of it. This is the American Rescue Plan, which you've all heard of in the news. Throughout the country, there was a large amount of money was given to towns, cities, counties, states, et cetera. We got $31.4 million in 2 tranches, half of it in the summer of '21, half in the summer of '22. The BET and the Comptroller have made an arrangement where I give a monthly update on the ARPA spending. For the new members, this is on the town side. It does not reflect the monies around 15 plus of elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund monies. I do not track them. They are done separately by the board, the Greenwich Public Schools. The difference between the two basically is the town's ARPA monies was giving up front. The ESSER monies for the Greenwich Public Schools are reimbursements. So my report is basically on the town side of ARPA monies received. You can see the figures there where we got the 31.4, and you can see the monthly spendings, et cetera, with the cash balances and the money is invested in the either the STIF fund, the short-term investment fund, or treasury bills. We've earned over $1 million in interest since we've got the money in the 2 tranches. The question came up is it's actually going to be a funding source potential for the budget this year to bolster the interest income, which we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks, especially when we do the revenue presentation. Now, there's restrictions or requirements on the town ARPA monies. It's got to be fully obligated by December 31st, 2024, and fully spent by December 31st, 2026. The money is fully obligated, meaning that it's appropriated. However, we have one project, the Bank of Byram Archibald Neighborhood Center, also known as Bank, B-A-N-C, cannot find a trainee or trainer for a program, and the money will have to be repurposed and go through an RFP and the repurpose process again in the budgets this February and go to the RTM. Now, that's where we are with the ARPA money, and I will move down. I'll come back for any questions. On the annual audit, we asked for an extension. There's a second GASB pronouncement. GASB is Governmental Accounting Standards Board pronouncements that come down on the governmental side as opposed to FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board. We've got 87, which was the leases we put in last year, which caused the delay. Now we have 96, which is subscriptions, GASB 96. Again, another delay. One of the things that exacerbated the process is the accounting firms have shortages of auditors, and they hamper the process a little bit. So we're basically finished, but we're waiting on the auditors to audit the transactions for GASB 87 and 96. And the audits will come before you for approval probably with a presentation from RSM US LLP in February or March. The capital projects financing, again, we maintain our AAAs with the two firms, Moody's, S&P. To the 5 members, you may ask the question, do you use Fitch? Do you not use Fitch for a reason? Actually, we used to have all 3 of the rating agencies, and the BET about 5 to 10 years ago decided to lop off Fitch from the process. So we use Moody's and S&P, and Fitch has rated some of our paper that's pretty old out there. So they do occasionally contact me for updates on our financial standings. We got on the $40 million general obligation, GO bond, 2.425895, 2.4%. I thought you might find it interesting is if I gave you the results of the last 3 years in reverse order. In 23, we had 35 million general obligation bond. We got 2.03. In 22, we had 40 million. We got 0.45 basis points. In 21, we got 0.17 basis points. On the band side, the bond anticipation notes, we got 3.07. And I've also attached the credit rating agencies' reports in the packet. A year ago, we got 2.377. 2 years ago, we got 21 basis points, that's 0.21. And 3 years ago, we had 12 basis points. And the Greenwich Time actually did a story about money for nothing. It was so cheap to borrow on these particular rates. One more, and I'll open it up to questions. On the second page, the annual reports are in there for a first read. The departments put a lot of work into this. I stress you to read them for 2 reasons. I want to give credit to Samantha Longo, who did a lot of work gathering the information from the department heads, and we had a cutoff in December, and we did the compilation. We'd like another 12 set of eyes to maybe look at it for grammatical errors and accuracy, but they're valuable. They're actually, you're going to be voting on the department budgets, and if you read them, you learn a lot. I mean, it's every year they give us updated statistics, so I suggest you read them for them 2 reasons. Having said that, I will open it up to any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Pete, I just would like to reiterate what you said, and we miss Laura Erickson for her proofing skills, but if everybody could please read and offer any suggestions or improvements. But these are the department's compilations, so we really can't really change it unless there's a glaring error that somebody notices. Correct?
Then
Thank
Elliot.
you for your report. I just had a question with respect to the accounting entries for GASB 87 and 86. Are those entries or reclassification entries that need to be audited? Were there any other adjustments to the accounting system or other delays that you could expect going past the date that you expect to issue it, which I think you stated
We're not there
February
yet
29th?
with auditing adjustments. These are, they're auditing, they're not adjustments. They're accounting entries recognize the value of the leases and the subscriptions. We don't know if there's any audit adjustments. When I get to the educational piece, I'll talk a little bit about the audit process with the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and the single audits. But Matt, right now, we don't know if there are any audit
Are these
adjustments.
just reclassifications that are required pursuant to the change in the GASB pronouncements?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
Elliot?
I just wanted to say, I wanted to congratulate you and frankly, all of the BET, the people that run the town, on the excellent execution that you got last week in selling the debt. The town of Greenwich sold 5-year debt. We sold 5-year debt at 20 basis points through the national municipal AAA curve, so 20 basis points less. We issued debt at 228 on a day that the AAA debt was at 248. So, which is really a testament to our town's excellent creditworthiness. So, well done.
you're the finance board, you deserve just as much credit as we do. I appreciate it. I wasn't here.
Pete, I have a question on the Havemeyer building water damage. You note that we've received about 265 and change through the reimbursement. Do you know what the total claim, I forget what the total claim was?
It's in between 500 and 550. Okay, they're still going back and forth between the adjuster and the finance people at the Greenwich, I keep saying, but it's the Greenwich Public School System.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the controller? Do I have a motion to accept the controller's report? Leslie
moved.
Tarkington moves. Leslie Moriarty seconds. Without objection, we accept the report. No objections seen. It's unanimous. So if Mr. Menarski would now give the treasurer's report, please.
Okay, again, basically for the 5 new members, these are cash balances. They are not necessarily correlated to fund balances. They're in the middle of the year. For example, if you look at the general fund with 154 million, you've got the second biggest month of the year coming up, January as opposed to July. So that's another 100 million that'll come in. There's two pages here. One in the upper left says December. It's a monthly report, and then the second one is a fiscal year to date. Just a general knowledge to the new members is the general fund basically pays all the bills for all these other funds. We call them odd funds, other funds. And there's a lot of transfer activity. So a cash balance might not be necessarily 100% accurate because one of these funds, and I'll give you an example, the OPEB fund, all the administrative costs are paid for by the general fund. And at the end of the year, we take the annual contribution and net it against what the OPEB fund owes the general fund. So basically, these are cash balances, but you must take in mind that a lot of them owe the general fund monies, and that's reflected in the transfer column. Having said that, I'll answer any questions on the Treasury report.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Without objection, we'll approve this unanimously. Seeing none, unanimous acceptance of the treasurer's report. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 10, which is, as I discussed earlier, I'm sorry. There are no standing committee reports. There are no liaison reports. There are special project team reports that I included for the 2 committees I'm on, Central Middle and Julian Curtis. I would note that on Central Middle, I sent everybody an updated estimate on your town email this afternoon. The estimate from Turner has risen by 7.66 million to just shy of 120 million estimated cost for Central Middle School. Stephen?
I apologize that I didn't get my report on the old Greenwich School out to you in time for inclusion in the minutes, but I did circulate over the weekend a report on where we stand on old Greenwich School as well.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you, Stephen. Any other notations under number 9 of any other committees? Seeing none, we'll move to old business, which, as I noted earlier, is really just a discussion item. This came up at our December meeting, and it went through the Budget Committee at the December meeting, came before the BET, and it's on the agenda because we took no action on it at the full BET. The Law Committee, and I'll ask Karen if she wants to comment, but the Law Committee made some changes to the agreement between the town, the proposed agreement between the town and the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company. Those changes were presented to Mr. Branyan, who then presented the changes to the fire company. And I hear that the fire company is quote, not happy with those changes. We don't know the exact details, but we'll have Mr. Branyan here tomorrow. We might learn a little bit more tomorrow morning. It's a little out of the scope of the Budget Committee, but it wouldn't be a bad opportunity to ask. So Karen, I don't know if you've got any comments to make?
No, just to be clear, we forwarded some suggested inclusions that Mr. Branyan and our town attorney were going to look at, and those proposals were made through the town attorney, and the Law Committee has not received any feedback yet, so I don't know where it stands.
I think there's general sentiment in favor of this. We've just got the devil's in the details. So, any other discussion on old business? Under new business, as you heard from Mr. Mynarski, you've got the annual report. It's a first read. We hope everybody does read it. It's pretty extensive and it's pretty interesting. We will expect to have an approval process at the February full BET meeting. So please be prepared for that. Second item of new business, and you've got it in your packet, is a report of the Investment Advisory Committee recommendations to the Board of Estimate and Taxation on the appointments to the OPEB Trust Board. Do you want to, maybe, Pete, do you want to explain how the OPEB Trust Board works a little bit? Or is that part of your next report?
Sure, if Misha's mad at me or not. This is, first of all, I've been doing this for like 10 years, more than, since 2008, and I apologize for not forwarding the report of the IAC before you. But the way it works is, do you want me to go over the history of the OPEB Trust?
No, I don't. I just think how the appointments work and what the customary
Okay,
aspect of
what happened
it
was,
is.
I can make it a little bit shorter. The OPEB used to be a special revenue fund. It became a trust when it went through the RTM in January of 2008. Prior to that, it was actually an ad hoc committee. It was Steve Walko, Art Norton, I'm sorry, it was not Steve Walko, it was Larry Simon, Bob Stone, Art Norton. They came off when it became a trust, and it was replaced with citizens. It was Phil Skidmore, Rob Stricker, Bill Ferdinand. Poor Mr. Skidmore passed away, and Joe Pellegrino came on the board. What they did previously, when it was volunteers, they would go through the vetting process, and the BET would interview them, look at their resumes, and they would get 3 staggered terms, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. And there would be a 1 year, chairmanship for 1 year each year. So where the process worked in the past is when the term came up from member number, first of all, Natasha Yemitz is the trustee of the OPEB Trust Board. These are members, okay? So these members, when their term came up, I would bring it to, there would be a vote at the OPEB level, it wasn't a vote. There would be a recommendation to the BET if they are willing to serve another 3-year term. And then each year, in either June or July, the BET would vote to rehire the members, okay? And each year, there would be a vote to re-up the chairmanship. What happened a couple years ago was that we went from internal management of the OPEB Trust, and we did an OCIO, Outsourced Chief Investment Officer. We went through an RFP process and got Vanguard. And we had 2 members that were not happy with that decision. One actually moved away to Boston. He fell off and was replaced by a BET member. The second one resigned in protest. He fell off and was replaced by BET members. So where we are is this, that 2 of the members were former BET members, Mr. Drake and Ms. Cruiser. They no longer are on the BET, and they are being replaced by the 2 members, as noted in this report, to serve concurrently with the BET term. Before they were on a fiscal year basis, now they're concurrent, so that 2 years from now, there'll be a new vote for their memberships. You still have the outlier with Mr. Pellegrino, whose chairmanship goes July 1st to June 30th. So what you have here is a vote to replace Mr. Drake and Miriam Cruiser on the OPEB Trust Board. The OPEB Trust Board basically meets and quarterly, and they're concurrent with the BET Investment Advisory Committee. They'll make recommendations, if possible, to the IAC. And if the IAC, Investment Advisory Committee, stays within the parameters of the investment advisory statement, the IPS, Investment Policy Statement, they vote internally. If it warrants, they go outside the IPS, it goes to the full BET. This is an action before you to just basically select new members, not trustees, members of the OPEB Trust.
Thank you.
Did I cover your
Yep, that's
question?
fine.
Okay.
Harry, can I add a comment?
Well, could I ask that Karen read the resolution so that we can have it before us? Sorry. Here.
Okay. Resolved that the Board of Estimate and Taxation appoints Nisha Arora and Scott Kalb to fill vacated appointments to a term on the OPEB Trust Board expiring at the January 2026 BET organizational meeting.
Being that that comes from a committee, it doesn't need to be seconded. Is there discussion on the resolution? Didn't I hear someone wanted to say something?
Yes, Nisha.
Nisha, go ahead.
Now that I'm reading the resolution, maybe it's not necessary, but one of the things I sent a note to Karen and Steve today, to the Law Committee, that the terms are 3 years per our charter and our resolution. So one of the things the IAC did 2 weeks ago is we voted to have the term of the BET members on the OPEB board line up with the term, their BET term. So we still need to figure out a way to officially change that in the charter or the resolution, but we'll work on that outside of this. So right now, I think the appointment is just for us to be on the OPEB board, and then we'll figure out how to get the terms changed for the OPEB board members. I'll work with Stephen and Karen on the Law Committee on that.
I think you're referring to the policy and procedure manual, not the town charter.
No, both. So
It's in the town charter?
yeah, it was in one of the ordinances that, and I forwarded it to the Law Committee today, that,
Okay.
and it specifically says 3 members staggered for 3 years. It actually makes no reference of BET members. So we'll work on the language change that 2 of the 3 members should be BET IAC members, and it should be 2 years in line with the BET term. But so I guess this resolution is just to have Scott and I on the OPEB board, and then we'll again, we'll figure out the term language in a subsequent, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes, go
just a question, please, actually, to Nisha and David, who are fellow members of the IAC, and our chairperson, Nisha. Question is, I'm just wondering, did we actually address the term of Mr. Pellegrino?
So
I thought that we changed that
We thought
from
what we
fiscal year
discussed.
to line up with us
That's
as well,
right.
or
So
not?
the thought there is that 2 of the 3 members would be BET members who would serve calendar year terms and consistent with theirs. And we would leave the member at large at the fiscal year, so there's some continuity. But we also said that we would change the term of all OPEB members to be 2 years instead of 3 years. But that, again, will work on the language with the law committee, and we'll also put some kind of a term limit on board members. But that's an IAC discussion for next month.
Right. Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? Nope. Okay, thank you, Pete. I think we could have a raising of the hands as to approving this motion. We don't think we need to call it. All in favor, raise your hand, please. That's unanimous. 12-0-0. Thank you. Get to the right page here. Approval of the minutes. We've got 3 sets of minutes before us. There's been some discussion today, and I think what we're going to do is defer the December 11th minutes because those need quite a bit of work. But let's bring before us the regular meeting, November 14th, 2023, and I'll recognize Ms. Moriarty because I believe you would like to amend those
Right.
minutes.
First, let me just get them on the table, so I'll make a motion to
Oh, right,
to
sorry.
approve the November 14th, 2023 minutes.
Moved by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Leslie Tarkington to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of November 14th, 2023. Discussion, Leslie.
Yes, so on the November 14th meeting minutes, there was some discussion about the item 13, the approval of the minutes for October 24th. I think that's why this body didn't approve these minutes earlier. So I want to replace the motion for approving those minutes with the following. A motion was made by Mr. Ozesmir, seconded by Mr. Fisher, to approve the minutes of the BET special meeting of October 24th, 2023. Mr. Ozesmir made an amendment to add a reference to his question about the BET's impact on the project timetable. Ms. Moriarty made an amendment to add a reference to the provided confirmation that all safety protocols would be taken. Ms. Vasiliotis made an amendment to add a reference to the language of the policy. The minutes were approved 6-4-2, opposed, Erickson, Raymer, Shelps, Weisbrod, abstained, Cruiser, Moriarty. And the rationale here is typically we'll say motion was made to approve the amended minutes, but that typically is when we are making non-substantive changes. Because these minutes were approved not in a unanimous fashion, I felt it was important that we reflect the types of changes that were made to those minutes in general terms. So that reference is why the vote was 6-4-2.
I believe you also had a change to item ED6.
Yes, the motioner and seconder in my notes was Ms. Tarkington, second by Mr. Selps, not as reflected in the minutes. So that should be modified as well.
Okay. Is there any objection to the amendments put forth by Ms. Moriarty and Ms. Tarkington? Hearing no objection. Now before us would be the minutes as amended for the November 13th. Ms. Tarkington, you have another suggestion?
Yes, I have, first I have, we'll call it a Scribner's error in, I think it's in FI 7, just to remove the duplicative unanimous consent, by unanimous consent, and then just add motion carried. It's repeated. just the same thing twice. So I think that's more or less a Scrivener error. I don't know whether it needs a vote. And then the other thing I would like to do is make a motion, where is that the one? To the minutes, SE3. In this case, to add to the last sentence before the motion, the clause, quote, "As the DPW has sufficient funds to cover the indemnification insurance expense annuity." And I'd like to move that.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's an amendment's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection to unanimous approval of that amendment? Seeing none, the two amendments have been accepted. Is there any other amendments to the November meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there any objection to approving those minutes unanimously?
As amended.
As amended. Thank you, Karen. Okay, that carries 12-0-0. So now before us are the minutes of the BET organizational meeting of January 8th, 2024. Could it be someone else moved and seconded to put these before us?
I'll move it.
Karen moves it.
I'll second.
Leslie Tarkington seconds. Are there some changes to be
Yes.
made here? Ms. Vasiliotis.
Yes, under call to order, we're changing chairman to chair, where it says Chairman Dan Osismere. These are all basically Scrivener's errors. On number 3, the sentence starting with Ms. Jansen nominated, complimentary is changed to, with the E is changed to an I, the first E. Under 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, where it says clerk of the BET, it's clerk of the board. And the next paragraph, again, clerk of the board, not clerk of the BET. Under 6, the first bullet point should just be a regular paragraph. Mr. Fisher commented, and I just think the bold was probably there because of number 7. The remainder of the standing committee should be unboldened. And I think that's it.
Any objection to the amendment to the minutes? Seeing none? Any discussion or other changes?
I'm sorry, I missed another change where it says Ms. Vasilidis was elected vice chairman, should be chair, and that's in 3, under hearing no further nominations, the last sentence.
Okay, seeing no objection to the amendment, we'll take a vote on the minutes for the January 8th meeting as amended. Are there any objections to adopting those minutes? Seeing none, unanimous 12-0-0 to adopt the minutes of January 8th. Thank you all. We'll try to do a better job in circulating ahead of time and getting these things in better shape with Samantha's help, I'm sure. Okay, so we'll move on to 13, Finance Department presentation and introduction to government accounting, budgeting, and bonding. Mr. Menarski.
We need Mr. Geiger to set up.
Okay, Mr. Geiger will start us
Presentation.
off.
Is it okay if I sit here?
That's fine with me.
I need to. I gotta make sure Matt and Elliot I can see in case they have questions. Pardon me. Well, while he's setting up, we did have at an investment advisory committee, my treasurer, Natasha Yemitz, gave a very good cash management overview. We had lively discussion. It was very educational. Even from my perspective, I know that Elliot brought some good questions and Scott to the table in the conversation. During the audit committee, we had an overview with I gave an overview on the internal audit outsource program in Chairman Dave Alfano led the conversations. We also had from the risk manager a presentation on the risk management program and an overview. What we have now is basically is to help you in a couple of areas. We have a somewhat different accounting system than the outside world. I know there's a couple of CPAs on the BET board now. Our accounting is different a little bit than what they may see. It's not that complicated, and our budgeting process is somewhat unique compared to the corporate world. And what I'd like to do is, you want me to keep going? Can anybody follow the slides until we get to?
Yeah, we can just work off the paper, that's fine.
Okay, and the cover is the introduction of governmental accounting, budgeting, and bonding. It was originally scheduled for the organizational meeting. It's been rescheduled for this meeting. In the past, we've done this in a more informal setting. We've sat in the middle of the room and didn't film it, and we had more interaction. Slide number 2 is the fund accounting. It basically is a system of accounting that utilizes funds. And I'll go into the specific funds. You got a glimpse of the funds when you saw the treasurer's report. There's the definition of a fund on slide number 2. Slide number 3. Where does the town of Greenwich account for its financial results? We use a municipal information system. We've known it for decades as Munis, okay? It changed its name to Enterprise ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. In finance, we do not plan on changing. We want to stick with Munis, so we're not going to reference ERP. Although everybody's picking up on that acronym now throughout the country, but I'd like to stick with Munis for at least a while. The financial system, and I'll show you how we feed the financial system. In order for us to do the annual comprehensive financial report, mandated by the state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management, we need to extract the information from the Munis system. When we extract that information, the outside auditors, this is RSM US LLP, it's not CLP, the outsourced internal audit group. They produce, I should say, I produce the annual comprehensive financial report, and we need to produce 2 audits, which are called single audits. They are the state and federal, and obviously the state is state grants that come to us, and the federal is federal grants. In the case of the federal grant, you would, I mentioned some of them, it would be the ARPA monies. In the case of the state grant, they basically are predominantly educational grants that go into the educational fund, which I'll speak to it on a later slide. The audits are presented, and Matt asked a question before about auditing adjustments. Aside from the transactions to recognize the present value of leases under 87 and subscriptions under 96, the auditors audit those transactions. And aside from them, if they find any errors, if, for example, we record something as earned when it should have been unearned, or we accrue a different amount, they put our adjusting entries into this single audit or in the form of the management letter. There was a number of years where we had no management letters. It was well run. Where we have our most mistakes in the system are in recording these single audit entries. And you'll get a presentation in either February or March from the auditors, and they'll go over the results of the single audits, state and federal, and the annual comprehensive financial report. What's this? See that? The certificate of conformance, we The financial report that you see, they're all online. Everything that we do, whether it's internal audits, single audits, financial reports are online. And we apply for a certificate of conformance. The certificate of conformance, it means that that document has to conform to pretty strict compliance requirements, and it's reviewed by the Greenwich, the government, GFOA, Governmental Finance Officers Association, and it's every state, I should say, every local municipality, city, state, and North America and Canada, and they're reviewed, and we've gotten that certificate since inception for the last 60 years. If you, the purpose of it is, and the key word here is conformance, so that if you pick up my financial report and you pick up one from Tampa or one from Chicago, they're supposed to be the same, so that the reader, and a lot of the readers are investors in our money that we borrow, the bonds and the bands. They want to be able to look at this report and this report and be confident that they're looking at the same information. This is, okay. Slide number 4. You caught up, Roland? This is, okay, there's the fund types. They're basically 11 fund types: governmental funds, proprietary funds, and fiduciary funds. And on slide 5, the governmental funds are classified into 5 following areas. Everybody here knows about the general fund. That's where you have your police department, finance department, et cetera, et cetera. There's 13 special revenue funds. There's 2 capital projects funds. The 2 capital projects funds you had earlier in the evening, you had a discussion about the capital non-recurring fund. That's a reserve fund. The 2 main capital projects funds are the bond fund and the non-bond fund. The bond fund is the capital projects fund where we bond projects, we pay for them through bond money. The other fund is the non-bond fund, is we pay for it with cash, or in the case of the capital non-recurring. The capital non-recurring is a fund, a reserve fund, which I said before had $4.9 million. You just transferred $411 million from the capital non-recurring to the Z, it's called the Z fund. It's the other capital projects fund. We have debt service funds. We do not use, Greenwich does not use a debt service fund. It's a form of a sinking fund. And coincidentally, Elliot and I have been talking about this in the last couple of days. Not the place, but I'm sure that you're going to bring your thoughts to the table on creating a debt service fund. And a permanent fund we don't use. An example is I had one when I worked in Weston. They had a cemetery perpetual care fund. There's money that goes into this fund, and they're called permanent because you're not allowed to spend the principal, and you spend the money, the interest earned off the principal. It would be something similar to like the Peterson Trust Fund. I'm not sure if they're allowed to spend the principal, but a permanent fund we don't use, and it would be a case where there's a large donation for a specific reason. We spend only the interest, not the principal. Slide 6. A fund. The A is important, and I'll get into that. The letter A in front of the fund. This is a description of the general fund, and as I said before, you all basically know, are familiar with the general fund. Slide 7 is the special revenue funds. And again, this is fund accounting. It's a whole bunch of different funds. They go into a financial report. They're all married. They're blended together. They float from the back of the report to the front of the report, and they become a centralized statement of revenues, expenses, et cetera, and it shows the overall well-being of the town. Whether you have one bad fund and you have 10 good funds, they all get blended together in the front part of the ACFR. The funds, I'll go through them quickly. Please stop me if you have any questions. To the right of every one of them is a letter, okay? And I'm going to get in. These funds all have an alpha designation before them. General funds A, the bond funds B, the shellfish and harbor D, et cetera, as we go down. The state and federal education projects funds are the grants that come from the state that goes to the Greenwich Public Schools. They would be like the IDEA, the individuals with disabilities, Title I, Title II, Title III, Perkins, ESSER funds. They all go into the E fund, which is the educational projects fund. Sewer maintenance, the J fund, and the sewer improvement fund below work in tandem. The main difference, there's a couple of main differences between the sewer maintenance and the sewer improvement. They both do capital projects, for example. The sewer improvement amortizes their capital projects over 20 years. The sewer maintenance fund is unique in that it's a vestige of the old general fund system of 5-year pay-as-you-go. So if you have a capital project in the sewer maintenance fund, it's paid over 5 years through the mill rate, okay? And you'll see, we'll talk about this at length when we go to the budget committee, because we had surpluses from closeouts that went back to help reduce the fund balance. As I said, sewer maintenance is pay-as-you-go. The sewer improvement is 20-year bonding, which kind of is strange because you kind of wonder why wouldn't they be the same, but it's something that was inherited from decades ago. We've got a legal opinion from Gene McLaughlin, who some of you may not know, who said that it would require a charter change to change the sewer maintenance. No appetite to go there. School lunch is pretty straightforward. This is a fund that was running in negative before COVID. It was running a severe negative over COVID with the free lunches and everything. They hit the jackpot with funding from the state. They're now at a very healthy $2 or $3 million fund balance. We were subsidizing this fund along with Nathaniel Witherall, just much smaller amounts, but this fund has got a healthy fund balance. The golf course, the Griffith Harris Golf Course, again, this is another fund with a very healthy fund balance. It's doing very well. It actually did well when COVID hit. There was a lot of people hitting the golf course. Steve must be a golfer. He's nodding his head. But it was strange that some things happened in reverse with COVID that were very good, as opposed to extremely bad. This was a good news. We use the term revolving fund. I call it a special revenue fund. I'll give you an example of why it's called a revolving fund. If you've played golf at the Griff, they have this nice country club up there, that nice little building. We lent them the money, and they paid it back over 10 years. So that's why it's called they came up with the revolving fund moniker. The Lease Railroad Reinvestment Fund is not our money. It's a lease arrangement between Town of Greenwich and the state of Connecticut. Al Manelli, who a number of you may not know, who was replaced by Luigi Romano, had to go to the state each time he wanted to make improvements at Coscob, Riverside, and Old Greenwich train stations. The source of revenue, and it's in the Treasury report, is I think it's well over $5 million. Again, it's not our money, but it's our money to spend with the approval from the state of Connecticut. The money comes from permits at the Old Greenwich, Riverside, and Coscob, prorated. And then there's one-day permits, they're prorated. So the money's collected and it goes into the Parking Services Enterprise Fund, and the prorated piece goes into the lease fund. Again, it's only for maintenance for that area, for example, the steps or the very adjacent areas to it, with the approval working with the lease arrangement with the state of Connecticut. The grant fund, the F fund, is the grants the town gets, ARPA, Homeland Security, all of the other grants that exist that are not Greenwich Public School. Capital non-recurring, we talked about, that's a reserve fund. The sewer improvement fund, I spoke about. We all know about Nathaniel Witherall. Student Activities Fund, which is a fund that the auditors, I should say GFOA, made us call it a special revenue. It was called an agency fund. It's to fund the student activities, the different programs that you have in the school system. They have $1 million. It's like $1 million in, $1 million out. The balance now is about $1 million. And the last two are the little, they're both in the D fund. The Shellfish Fund is for shellfish permits. The Harbor Management Commission is basically a fund that was set up to implement the harbor management plan. And what the BET did was, for transparency, is they put them into the budget process, so that you'll see in your budget book, halfway through in the back there, they have to submit budgets, and if they run out of money and need an appropriation, they have to go to the BET. I went pretty quick. Any questions on slide 7? If not, slide 8 is, I talked about the capital projects funds, I talked about the debt service and the permanent funds. That's the 3 of the 5 governmental funds. Proprietary funds, we have 2. One's an enterprise fund. It's the parking services fund. It's the only fund out of all of these funds where we run depreciation through the operations. Every other fund, the depreciation is off the books, and you do not see it run through as an expense. You will see it in the parking services fund. Again, it's called an enterprise fund. It's like it's doing business, like a regular business. And then there's finally the internal risk fund. The internal risk fund. The risk fund is a popular fund. It's down to about $2 million. You'll see, last year, Karen and Steve will tell you, we had a lot of activity with the settlements. When the settlements for legal cases come through, we fund them through the risk fund. And that is considered an internal service fund. Slide 10, fiduciary funds. We have, okay, question.
Why is depreciation run through that one fund and not through any other fund?
It's basically, it's not a requirement. Again, we go back to the CAFR, I'm sorry, the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and the depreciation is, if you went into the ACFR, they have 2 sections in there, and Roland is actually our depreciation guru. Whenever the BET has a question, they go to him because he actually makes all the entries. They're in a special account group, and they're monitored and they're actually reported separately than all the other funds. One page over is the parking service depreciation, and that's exclusive to that. In order to qualify for an enterprise fund and to make it more realistic, it's as if you're working like a business, it's more appropriate to run that through as a depreciation expense. So it's simply accounting requirements of the general, the GFOA. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but it's not required for all the other funds.
Are there specific assets that are attributed to that fund? So, what are you depreciating against? Yeah, what are you depreciating against, Pete? What assets are being depreciated in that fund?
I mean, Roland, if you want to chime in, it's because you're the it's basically, it's recorded in the footnotes. It's not in the operating statements.
Okay. Okay. The vehicles? Yeah. Okay. Now I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Slide 10, fiduciary. We have 4 trust funds. The obvious one is the one we all know about, is the retirement system fund. You have Nisha and Scott are the new liaisons. We have an outsourced chief investment officer. We hired Newberger Berman. For the 5 new members, we go back a number of years. We had tremendous difficulty hiring money managers. It took sometimes as much as 9 or 10 months to get a money manager on board because of the system where it had to go through the law department. They were very strict. And we managed to get the BET to agree to outsource the management of the fund so that we don't have to go through the law department to hire money managers. Newberger Berman was hired in the first week of July in 2017. We just re-upped them for another 5 years. Actually, it's 3 with 2 option years. So they're the outsourced chief investment officer. The police benefit fund is a fund with no assets that has 3 beneficiaries. It's got this is a fund that was closed in around 1952 to police officers. The police officers went into the retirement fund, and there's 3 remaining beneficiaries. They're 99 years old, 96 years old, and 96 years old. It's pay as you go. There's a line item in the budget. We pay it for around $25,000, and there's no actuarial report, there's no assets. So when the 3 of them pass away, this fund will disappear. The OPEB fund, you're all familiar with, we spoke about it earlier. There, again, the outsourced chief investment officer was Vanguard, who got swallowed up by Mercer. We now have an evaluation committee led by Nisha, and they're going to interview to replace Vanguard. Interesting story, we did the RFP a couple weeks ago when there was a snowstorm, and there was 8 respondents, and 3 of them didn't make it. They got stuck somewhere, and they didn't qualify to be in the interview process. So we've got 5 standing out of the 8. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry, because they didn't meet the time deadline, they didn't arrive by 11 o'clock because of the
11
snowstorm.
o'clock, yeah.
And there was no dispensation. I just want it noted that, that in normal processes, you have some contingency for force majeure, like bad weather or something. I mean, to me, it sounds a little strange that we had a snowstorm where there was a lot of interference in traffic, people couldn't come, and yet, there was no extension granted because they didn't arrive by 11.
Your
They
beef
arrived by
was
1 o'clock.
Your beef is with the purchasing department. I'll tell you a story. I tell you, they're strict. I'm going to tell you another story is, and I'm going to try to defend the purchasing department. I had a friend who I worked with in another town. He was the financial advisor. He used to work for People's Bank. He's got his own firm now. We use Munistat for the credit reviews and the borrowing. And I used him in another town, and there was an RFP a number of years ago, and he lived east of New Haven somewhere. I don't remember exactly. The same thing happened to him. He got in his car, and he got stuck in traffic for like 3 hours, and he was 15 minutes late. And he came upstairs to me. He says, "Can you do anything?" I said, "Matt," I said, "you've known about this deadline for 3 weeks." And he said, "Why didn't you come yesterday?" It's the same excuse. If a storm is coming, there's a risk involved. If you're going to go on I-95, there's a risk involved with the traffic. But I hear you, but it's the rules as far as the the RSB process. Let me just. If you noticed in the controller's report, in the risk management section, did you all read the controller's report? We did a RFP for the
Insurance broker.
the insurance broker. I'm trying to remember, it was broker services. We actually had somebody FOI all of our documents. It's in the controller's report. So people watch, and if you broke the rules, you're out there as far as getting your name on the front page, not your name or my name, but people actually watch the process and they question the process to make sure that it's fair. So it's, I understand the part about the storm, but that's the rules.
I think that in many other places that I've been involved in, there's a contingency built in for unforeseen risks. I mean, what if there was a hurricane? Still say no, sorry.
Actually,
I'm just saying that this is, to me, I find it silly that we lost 3 if they arrive 20 minutes late or whatever it is.
Can I-
I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this
No,
point.
no, it's good, it's worth talking about. Can I entertain Lucia's question?
Nisha had her hand up, then I'll go to Lucia.
I just wanted to add that we discussed this at the IAC, and we were all very strongly in agreement with, with this exact same point. I strongly agree with Scott, so we did take it back to purchasing and let them know that the IAC unanimously felt that we should consider the other three because they did get it in on that same day, just a little bit later, and purchasing did come back and said no exceptions. But again, like Scott, we all believe it's silly. It didn't make sense. It's more choice is better for the town. So we thought it was in the town's best interest to consider all 8. But we did ask, and they did say no.
Lucia, did you have a comment? No.
No, I mean, this is part of the education process. Things happen. But you'll see, as time goes by, certain events will occur that you'll question why we do it this way or that way. And sometimes they're logical, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're fair, sometimes they're not.
Well, to be fair, Pete, I mean, people knew that the storm was coming, so there should have been arrangements made,
Yeah.
you know.
And again, there's 4 fiduciary funds, and the 4th one is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is created about 2 years ago. Excuse me. Last year was the first year we put them in our books. You're all the 5 new members are not. With ARPA money, we gave them $1.1 million, which was conditioned. They met the conditions, and we released $650,000 in December, plus matching donations of about $35,000. So that's the fiduciary funds, fund balance. There's, I'm sure a lot of you've heard the term that people have 2 sets of books. What they really mean is a lot of people think it's nefarious or something shady is happening on. It's normal to have 2 sets of books, okay? That's because you have 2 fund balances. We have fund balance on a GAAP basis, and we have fund balance on a budgetary basis. The credit review people look at fund balance on a GAAP basis, okay? In the ACFR, the front part of the report is the GAAP. In the ACFR, the back of the report is the budgetary basis. We have we have a policy, a fund balance policy that uses the budgetary fund balance. And the allocation range is 8 to 15%. We're normally up around 15%. So we have basically 2 types of fund balance. Continued, there's on a GAAP basis, there's 5 components: non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. The important ones are non-spendable. We've got 4.8 million of that is in that category, which is Nathaniel Witherall. I don't agree with it, but the auditors put that 4.8 in this category. I disagree with it. I think this came before we had the issues with Nathaniel Witherall. Restricted and committed are basically funds that have money restricted because they're grants and they have to be restricted or committed to a special allotment. Assigned basically is assigned to encumbrances and use of fund balance, and unassigned basically means it's totally unrestricted. The fund balance best practices is to have 2 months of expenditures, 16.6. Again, we're at around 15% on a budgetary basis, so we have a healthy fund balance. The credit agencies don't usually, it's usually not an issue when we speak with them. Now, in order for the munis or the financial system to work, we have to have a chart of accounts. We have to have designations that allow us, when we type into our computers entries, whether they're revenues, expenditures, they go into the right bucket. So I gave you an example here of A130-5101. Roland and I get a paycheck. Well, Samantha gets a paycheck too every 2 weeks. And what happens is when we get paid, the money is recorded It's downloaded by Adam Ross, who's works for Roland up in the finance department, and it goes to A, the general fund. If you work at the golf course, it goes to M. Okay, if you work in another the sewers, it goes to a J or a K, and then it goes to a department. The 130 is the finance department. So the three of us, and then it'll go to a designated account. It could be, in this case, salaries, or it could be overtime. So our paychecks go to A130-51010. If you're a police officer, it'll go into the 200 series. If you're Parks and Rec, it'll go into the 800 series. And again, the object codes below go into different categories of salaries, longevity, overtime, and then it gets complicated when you have 24/7 people with differentials, et cetera. Like Nathaniel Witherall, Public Safety. We go to 14. Major object codes are, as I said before, I talked about salaries are in the 101s. Now, all expenditures have a designation of 5 in front of it, and then the next three numbers are the important ones. It said 5 says it's an expenditure, 101 says it's a personal service or a salary, and then it allows you to go into the right fund, the right department, and the right object code. And then you can see there's a series of object codes. Now, within each one of these, like the 100s, let's say that you were in the police department and you had $1 million budgeted for salaries, and you spent 900,000. But let's say that you spent, and you had $1 million for overtime, and you spent 50,000 more. As long as collectively they are all under the appropriation, you don't need to come for a transfer, an additional appropriation. We group them in sections. 100's the salaries of the consultants, 200's are services, 300's are the supplies and materials. The difference between the 200's and 300's are tangible products. You can grab it, a piece of paper, something that's a supply, and the 200's are services. The 400's are basically the maintenance services, and then if you go to the next slide, social services is a small group of programs in the human services departments. We used to call it social services. They changed the name a number of years ago. 600 are all the insurances, the risk manager, all the different insurance policies are in the 600s. The 700s are basically the grants that I spoke about before in debt service. 800s is barely used. It's very rare. We do have refunds. And 900s is equipment. Say, for example, that I bought, and we did this a number of years ago for the BET members, we bought some laptops. We would charge it to the 900s in my department, like A130 and the 900s. And this is small, non-depreciable equipment as opposed to capital projects. 16, conversely, we have the revenues, which all start with 4. They're pretty obvious. 100 is all the property taxes. 200s are building permits and all the licenses, for example, barbershop licenses, all the different licenses the health department uses. 300 is the grants, ECS, special education. ECS is education cost sharing. Lot SIP, low SIP, they're the local transportation capital improvement grants. 500s are fines and forfeitures, parking fines. 600 is interest income, basically. Some employee contributions, COBRA, if you're late, if you lose your job and you keep your health care for a number of months. And then other is basically the transfers in the back of the book. It's the transfers back for the fringe benefits from the different funds other than general fund back into the general fund, where it's an expense in the where it's coming from, and a revenue to the general fund. So that's real quickly where I went with the accounting. Now we have capital projects, the bonding program. The town embarked on the program in May of 2017. I told a story in IAC where my treasurer, Kathleen Murphy, and I We're looking, we have, Natasha now has very extensive cash flows. They started about 2006-07, where using the pay-as-you-go and building Glenville, with Hamilton Avenue, and first phase of public safety, we would have run out of money in year 3 out of the 5-year pay-as-you-go. We convinced Mr. Lash, Jim Lash was the first selectman. He said, you can't do pay-as-you-go. You're going to run out of money. So he convinced, next slide, he did a trial run. At the same time, we were doing a bond for the Tuckman property. We had a series of purchases, acquisitions for Pomerantz and Tuckman properties in town. And he coupled the 8 million plus with a trial balloon where he took only 2.5 million of the public safety facility, which is now the police building, and he convinced the BET and he convinced the RTM that we need to start a bonding program with that rationale, where you can't spend $100 million and pay for it 20% in a 5-year period. So in slide 19, he basically convinced the BET, convinced the RTM, the program begins. We have the 46 million general fund capital projects authorized and 9.1 million sewer improvement capital projects. In the beginning of Project Renew, we had 7.6 million that was authorized. We only ended up spending half of that 7.6. Now, this is where the genesis of the argument between 5-year versus 20-year started. In order to convince the BET and the RTM back then, he sold the amortization of bonds for 5 years. We kept sewers at 20, we kept Nathaniel Witherell at 20, we kept the golf course at 10 for revolving fund. So we basically had the 5-year amortization for general fund, and that's where it all started and continues to this day. Slide 20. This was our first bond project, 45 million. It was 2 pieces, 39.2 and 5.8, 45 million. We blended the two together, and we ran out the sewer for 20 years, and the general fund was amortized over 5 years. Now, in the case of the bond fund, we authorize an appropriation. Let's say that I was going to use Central Middle School as an example at 112 million, but that's stale all of a sudden. Let's use Central Middle School at 120. Sorry for the bad news, but let's say you authorize Central Middle School at 120 million dollars, and let's say that you only spent 119 million. You've authorized 120, you've issued 119, the other 1 million lapses, okay? As opposed to, and that's the last bullet where they don't usually spend the appropriation. Then, before I get to the other side of it, you can go to slide 21. This is 23-24, where bonded versus non-bonded capital projects. We authorized in the current year 94.6 million. We also appropriated 12,795,000. That's the capital projects that are not bonded, that are paid for with cash. They're in the fixed charges in the back of the budget book, that when you look at it in the 999s, the fixed charges go from 901 to 999, and you'll see that these are cash. Now, the difference between the two is the 94.6, and I gave the example of the 120. If you only borrow 119, the 1 million lapses. In the case of the 12,795, you've taxed the taxpayer, so that if all of them projects you only spend 12 million, the 795 at the end of the projects collectively would close out and go back to the capital non-recurring fund. That's where the capital non-recurring fund gets its money, so that it can afford to give out $411,000 for the Hamilton Avenue. Big difference between the two, the way the process works, bonded versus non-bonded.
And just to interrupt, the 12 million is derived by the capital tax levy minus the debt service?
Yeah, it's in the, very good question, is in the mill rate page, it's the residual about you take the top number authorization, the bonding number, the negative number, in the case of the 94, and you get the difference between the two is the 12. That goes to the Z, we call it the Z fund, is the non-bonded capital projects. In the case of this year, we had a surplus in the capital non-recurring because you had a lot of closeouts. We got up to, I think, it was 2 years, 12 million. But we transferred and gave back to the capital levy 4 million, so that was 4 million less that you needed to borrow. And then you could trace these to the 23-24 budget book. The total, Leslie's question, when you go to the mill rate page, you'll see the number on the top is the 111,408,000, and then the number on the bottom is a negative number, the 94, and then you've got these other numbers in the middle to end up with a residual amount to balance on the bottom. It's called the capital levy. Interesting is to the new 5 members, if you've watched past performances of the BET, it's should I keep going?
Just that it's a determined number by the BET.
Okay.
It is not
It's-
prescribed by the level of capital spending.
Yeah.
It's not prescribed anywhere.
No,
We
but-
get to choose how much that money.
Yeah, but
number
it's,
should be.
it's when you get into the modeling, you're all going to get involved in the modeling. And Roland, who is the enabler of the model, there actually is more than one model on occasion, and there's different versions, one with a 5-year amortization, one with a 20, some with, I've seen them with in between. In order for the model to work, you have to sufficiently feed the capital levy with at least $3 million increments, and you're all going to be involved in this conversation in April, whenever you vote on it. The next is on page 22. I wanted to use an example for a couple reasons. I didn't use Hamilton Avenue because Hamilton Avenue was not bonded. It was paid for by cash. I didn't use Glenville because Glenville was too clean. It went through so fast. But what I wanted to use for illustrative purposes was New Lebanon. I didn't use the current ones because they're just starting, but it's interesting, and there's a lot of noise on this page with numbers and years and everything, but if you look at the top, you can see where New Lebanon, you had a feasibility study, 100,000, 2014-15, ban, bond. It was bonded in 17. In 15-16, you'd had the design for $2,850,000. It ban, bond. It was paid for. We fully funded in 2 years. Then in 16-17, we had construction. The difference with this project is it was heavily reimbursed by the state. We don't usually get this kind of relief, but it qualified as a special school for special rate that I'll get to on the bottom. So we started with the construction was authorized 32,061. We also had 2,298,000 authorized for temporary classrooms. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were supposed to be a Western Middle School? It fell through and they got repurposed and they became part of the construction process. So the new cost was $34,359,000. And the total of all of above was $37,309. And we had 3 years of consecutive years where we spent a total of $36 million. We had authorized a total of $37,039 of borrowings over 3 consecutive years. The project is still going on. It's 2014-15 it started. It still has a little over $1 million balance, and it's got 2 tranches of borrowings in 19 and 20. There's an error in the, when I was redoing this page last week, I double counted. That $23,812,000 is not the delta. It's $2,950,000, which is the 2 numbers on the top, so it should be lower. But you can see where we can't double dip, we can't borrow, and receive reimbursements. In the last bullet, you see we received reimbursements to date of $22,010,347. Again, I put this in here. This is a project that was started in 15. It's 9 years, 9 budget years later, 9 fiscal years later, and it still has activity. It still has spending in the current year and small encumbrances for cleanup, et cetera. MISA would be 3 pages long because of it was exacerbated by the soil remediation. There's so many issues, so I didn't use MISA as an example. But these projects, whether it's CMS or Old Greenwich or Riverside or whatever's coming down, Julian Curtis, they have long lives, and we don't simply go out and bond $20 million all at once because the spending is stretched out over many years. And if you actually look at MISA, I think, Leslie, it was about 11 or 12 years where it actually took to, with the borrowing, to actually spend down and amortize the total debt of MISA.
Misa's debt today is like 16 or 17 years.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
of the different tranches that we
Yeah,
borrowed.
just put dates on it. That project started in 2008, and I think we commissioned the last building in 2016. So it took 9 years to build
Yeah.
and then it takes time afterwards to pay off the debt.
And the soil remediation started in 11. And
July 14th, 2011 is when the shovel hit the ground
Yeah.
and we found it.
so what I'm trying to show with these examples is these projects are years. It just, that's the way it is. It's the process.
And so what Leslie didn't say is that we'll see more soil remediation for GHS in the fiscal year 25 budget.
All right, and slide 23 is, again, there's different types of capital projects. New Lebanon, Glenville are, reimbursable, non-recurring. You got the recurring annual ones like the paving, the school infrastructure, some of the projects, whether they're boilers, windows, roofs, they repeat. And then bridges are usually reimbursed, and we don't normally bond them because of reimbursement. And then the smaller capitals usually are the ones at $12 million I talked about before, are not bonded, and they go into, paid for by cash. Slide 24, appropriations and transfers. Department is allowed to spend up to the total amount appropriated within their respective MOCs, which I talked about before. Whenever the department needs additional monies, they either seek an additional appropriation or they transfer. They can transfer from the 200s to the 100s, the 300s to the 100s, et cetera, vice versa, back from the 100s to the 200s. If they can't meet the transfer, they have to go for the additional appropriation, which is a BET and RTM. Appropriations of 5,000 below are approved by the BET, and then above need approval by BET and RTM. We have BET can approve transfers of 5,000 above with RTM approval, and I can approve transfers internally of 5,000 and below. I was going to take the last 2 bullets out because this is, the reason I put it in there is a segue to the reference book. Our reference book needs cleaning up. We've got a number of policies. Who's on the policies? It's Karen, and I was looking at it, Samantha was looking at it. This is an example of a policy, that's why I put it in here, not to pick on the Board of Ed, because they do a lot of work with the transfers. Some of our policies are a little bit behind and need to be updated. Not the good ones, the OPEBs and the retirements and the debt policies and the fund balance policies. But some of the, like the internal audit function, we do things a little bit differently. So the reference book, I use this as an example where the reference book needs to be updated with the work of Karen and Leslie Moriarty. We have encumbrances. This is an example of a definition of encumbrances, which makes governmental accounting somewhat unique to the corporate world. Usually, all contracts are encumbered in full. You can supplement a contract if you have the money available. And then basically, the last section is reserved for restricted receipts. Reserved for restricted receipts are to hold money from year to year. We have, the general fund is a fund, a lapsing fund. All the revenues and expenditures and encumbrances are lapsed into fund balance. In the case of certain receipts that we get that we don't want to lapse, we create a reserve for restricted receipts. Examples are NIPS, opioid monies, 911 grants. I think I used examples in the next page. 28, this is just a few of them, of the triple Rs. The purpose of as I stated, is so the money doesn't disappear and you're going to spend it over a number of years. These are a number of examples. I gave some other new examples, like the opioid money, which Dr. Nelson spoke to me. She might be coming as early as next month, working in collaboration with the police department and YWCA on where to spend it, educational versus a product, Narcans, et cetera. So we have triple Rs on the balance sheet so they don't lapse. I will open it up to questions.
Any more questions of anybody? Thank you, Pete. Excellent presentation. I'm sure there'll be a lot more learning processes as we go along with the new members. Yeah. There it is. Okay.
We're back.
We're back. The only thing I'll note is that a tradition of the board is that the motion to adjourn comes from one of the motion in the second comes from one of the new members. We've got 5 new members, so I'll let you slug it out as to who's going to make. But we could just make it the 2 at the end. Unless there's any other business to come before us, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Well done.